let's call the meeting to order.
Mr. Paloma.
Here.
Mrs. Slade. Here. Mrs. Scott. I did it early this year. So I just started a couple minutes ago.
Okay, very good. I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda as presented to us. Moved by Israel, seconded by Jackie. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll have the roll, please.
Mr. Paloma.
Yes.
Mrs. Slade.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. Next, we move to the approval of the minutes that Kelsey provided for us from the last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll second.
Moved by Jackie, seconded by Israel. Have the roll, please.
Mrs. Slade. Yes. Mr. Paloma.
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. And let's move to your report then, Steve. I know you need to leave. And Kent had given me some background as to what you talked about, but I'll let you review what your meeting was about.
Yes, we're working on getting basically the things that we need to get done. Those items that have been taken care of is some budget items. I think it was 5-year forecast and the community annual budget.
5-year forecast is November, but community annual budget and then
The special education expenditures report
right.
are the two that were uploaded already, so they meet deadline. We have the 5-year forecast coming up, as well as we still need to do the annual report, which is the information to the parents of your students. And that involves last year's information, as well as the 2 site visits that still need to occur. So we are going to have to still do those, but it's not going to be as in depth. Now, I don't have clarification yet as to exactly how in depth, but like our first site visit, and Tara's probably been involved, Kelsey's been involved, Ryan's been involved. It is 2 administrators, it's 2 teachers, it's 2 students. It's quite a bit of interview and asking specific questions. Now, I don't know if we need to go that in depth because of our reprieve from some things, but I do know we still have to do that. So what exactly it looks like, I'll be getting that from Ryan DeSantis and Pepper and Wagner, because they kind of give us a script for it. And then we'll go ahead and get those done here. Typically we do 1 in the fall, and then we follow that up with 1 usually after the holidays, so January-ish. But that is not something that needs to be uploaded to Epicenter. So that is a quality practices review, so we'll probably do the report, get it over to you guys, and keep it on hand. But to my knowledge, we don't have to place it anywhere that like we would have to in the past. But we're still learning, so it's just new territory, which is good territory.
Yeah. And the notification of the 10-year contract.
Yes, in fact, Ed talked about that last night at the board meeting. When that exactly comes, they're thinking by the end of the month, which will be a really exciting thing. And Ed even talked about where we've come in 2 years. Because in 2 years' time, we'll come in, that they would be willing to give us a 10-year sponsorship agreement. So yeah, so that's exciting. And TCS doing good things, keep it up.
Hope to.
Partnership with Margaret.
Yeah, hope to. Very good. Anything else or any other questions?
Any questions?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Again, I'm sorry, but we'll see the family for a few before
Yeah,
I head to
very
the
good.
concert. So we'll see.
Very good. And Tara, did you have anything in the public participation? I really don't have anything to report different than what we've had. Everyone's receiving the legislative updates that we're getting through the Ohio School Board Association. Are you getting those, Jackie?
No.
You're not getting those? Okay. So could we look into that as to Jackie's email? They come through the email, and I will forward you the last couple that I've got,
Okay,
but they come every Friday.
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So I don't know that any other liaison has anything to report. Nothing different. I know Israel was involved in some conferencing with Ryan on personnel, but nothing specific to report this time. So we'll move on to the treasurer's report.
I did notice just now, as Steve said it, that for whatever reason, I don't think the community school annual budget printed. I've got the special ed services and I've got the expenditures, but the community school annual budget is a voting item. Would it be best to just go print it quickly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna do that right now.
And while you're doing that, we'll move on to you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Review.
Sure. So we'll start with the information items here, just a review of our current enrollment data, which is on the next page of our folder here. So at the end, or at the beginning of each school year, after a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, we always have a group of students who end up being withdrawn due to the 72-hour rule. And then throughout the school year, periodically, we have other students as well. However, some of those students do come back and enroll with us. We've seen that big wave take place, that initial wave, which knocks our enrollment down a little bit. But then, since then, we've seen our enrollment hold pretty steady from week to week. And currently, we are at 537 students. See the breakdown there. The highest area of enrollment is still Fremont, which is at 99 students, followed by Norwalk at 72, and Sandusky with 54 students. Any questions on the enrollment? Yeah.
No, but I'll say this, Sandusky City Schools kids that went to Monroe Prep are having a hard time. They are so far behind. So some of the parents was asking me, and I told them, I'm back over here.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I believe since the beginning of the school year, our Sandusky number has increased some, because I think we were in the 40s, now in the 50s. So we'll be here and ready for those students if that is an option they want to consider. The Sandusky Artisans number is averaging about 5 students right now per day. There are some days that are larger than others, but it's picked up a little bit since earlier in the school year, where we started with 2 to 3 maybe on certain days. So we're seeing some little bit larger numbers there, some growth. Part of that is that we've taken our OGO program there as well, so we're providing the food, grocery items for students to take home there as well as here. So I think that helps some. Last month we had discussion about the purchase of a van. Kelsey did reach out to our contact with the state about the use of ESSER funds, and they did give her the approval that that would be an acceptable fund, use of the ESSER funds. So our next step is then to get at least 3 quotes for vans and evaluate those vans, and then we would have to have board approval before making a purchase.
Did you see the conversation that took place today?
Yes, yeah, so we've got some information from Margaret, they've got some quotes recently as well. So those are quotes we might be able to utilize.
Do you have a ballpark?
Yeah, actually, I printed the one quote that Matt Smith gave me, because they have one so far, and then they have a few more that they're planning on getting, and he said that we could utilize those as well. But the base price that Cardinal Bus Sales and Service, they're in Lima, Ohio, the base price that they provided was $64,845.
And we do need to stay with a 9-passenger van, I believe, or less, 10 with the driver, because anything over that requires a CDL. So for our staff to get van certified if needed, have somebody here occasionally drive students, we want to stay below that.
And that would meet our needs.
Yeah.
Is this a new or used vehicle?
We would probably look at new.
But you looked at it in the foundations, but sometimes they'll do a matching grant for vans.
So, yeah, so we would be using all grant money through the ESSER funds, because we have that money available until September 2024.
But I mean, like the local places, a lot of those grants Not of those foundations will do a matching.
Yeah, so that's, something we should keep in mind for the future for other projects too. Good point. Any questions about potential purchase of a van? Okay, do you want me to continue or do you want to go back to Kelsey?
Does anybody object if Ryan continues and then we bounce back to?
No, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Do you mind, Kelsey?
So under new business here, we have several graduates.
Ryan, could I ask another question before we move into new business? Could you give us some kind of report about how the totes are going, the tote program with OVO?
It's going very well. Every day, so Carrie Bernard's leading that project. And every day she has a designated certain bus routes that are getting their items for that week. And as they're going out the door, she has them wrapped up. Students are actually helping to package them as well. And she's at the door handing those out as students leave. I would say for the most part, most students are pretty receptive to taking those. There's a few students who will deny or decline, but the students are, and sometimes the students get on the bus and they'll trade items, one student will have something that another student wants, and they can trade. I think it's going very well.
Good.
I heard it was.
Yeah.
The girls are over.
Oh, yeah? Oh, good, good. Well, that's good to know that we're getting good response from them too, because that's awesome.
Do you agree, Tara? That's what you're seeing down there as
Yeah,
well?
Carrie she changed the schedule from what she had set at the beginning of the school year. She was looking at a different bus route each day, and it turned out like with the craziness of 3 buses leaving at the same time, that it was too hard to kind of track which bus was which. So she redid the schedule. So it's now only 3 days a week, but like all the buses that leave at the first route, all of those kids are getting it. So they're all getting it at the same time. So that's actually cutting down on the separating who's taking it and who's not. So I
That's
think more kids are taking it there too. And then we are having quite a few kids that are going and like getting supplemental, not just that leaving with it. So the word is getting out that if you have a need beyond, just that small amount that you get on your designated day, the kids are going and seeking carry out to get some additional food.
Good.
Yeah.
That's definitely benefited a lot from this.
Thank you.
So item A under new business is resolution to approve the awarded high school diplomas to following students upon successful completion of the graduation requirements as set forth by the state of Ohio. This month we have 4 graduates for approval, and this brings our total to 10, I believe, already this school year, which for this early in the school year is a pretty good number. Item B is a recommendation to approve a basic terms resolution, enter into a contract with Harbortown JV LLC for the 2022-23 and 23-24 school years for the purpose of leasing an alternate school location in Vermillion. So just a reminder here, we are looking at adding a second alternate site, and this lease will be one of the several steps in that process to making that happen. So following approval of that lease and signing by both parties, we have several steps to complete the opening assurance from Margaretta. Some of those include like a health inspection, fire inspection. We have to prove that there's an occupancy certificate, and there's 1 or 2 other steps in that process. But once all of those items are completed, then I will provide Margaretta with proof, and we will then next month most likely be looking at doing an amendment to our contract to allow for the opening of this alternate location. And then there has to be 10 business days from the approval of that, the voting on that amendment to the actual opening. So realistically, we're probably looking somewhere around December 1st for potential opening of the location.
And has the reception been positive?
Yes.
I know something Ken felt to be positive. Wanting to maybe wait to have that assurance of the 10-year contract.
Yeah, they would like to get that wrapped up first before moving forward with the second alternate set. Okay, item C then is a recommendation to accept the resignation of Natasha McCown part-time position of ELL coordinator, Spanish interpreter, effective September 26, 2022. So Natasha, last month, we actually approved her in this part-time role on an as-needed basis. And shortly after, she got back to me and said, due to personal reasons outside of school, she just could not commit to it any longer, unfortunately. So we're sad to lose her in that role. In the meantime, we are going to try to get by with our testing coordinator, Sarah Summers White, or White Summers, I should say. She has some Spanish speaking ability, and she's been able to. Tara, have we completed some of that initial testing for the ELL?
We've done 2 screeners.
2 screens.
Yes.
So I'm going to look further into this with the state to see specifically if what she's capable of doing meets our needs, or I should say, meets the requirements of ODE, or if we need to bring somebody else on board with maybe a little more expertise that can fill that.
Are there offices? Many years ago, I worked with the office out of Fremont for Spanish migrant, yeah, programs.
We had talked about that a little bit yesterday.
Any services that they could provide.
Actually, Troy Ruiz last year had come from there as well. She had previously worked there, I believe.
She worked there in conjunction with working with us, because that's what she did over the summer.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so item C, there is a resignation there from Natasha. Item C is a recommendation to approve the following employees to receive $50 per hour for training for pre-ETS that takes place outside of the school day. Ashley Hermes, Karen Zirkle, Karen Berg, Faulkner, and Kristen Fallow. This includes hours of training that took place during the 2021-2022 school year that were not processed until fiscal year 2023. So the main reason this is on the agenda is just because we had to pay that training after fiscal year 22. So it took place in fiscal year 22, but the payment happened for some of those personnel in FY 23.
Yeah, I can clarify that we initially approved it as coming out of the pre-ETS grant, and almost the entire majority of it did. They had one final session that was processed on June 30th, but it was for the 7/5 payroll. So it's technically outside of the fiscal year, and so that small amount needs to come out of the general fund. I believe it only ended up being about 900. All the rest of their pay for that was taken off that grant. So because we initially approved it to come out of the grant, we just wanted to make sure we communicated that there was a small amount that needs to be paid for out of the general fund.
And explain to everyone else what ETS stands for.
Okay, so pre-employment transition services. So mainly working with our special education population to transition down into from school into future career. Yeah. But we're just being safe here with this resolution. We're just trying to make sure that we cover all bases and we're safe on the payments that were made. Okay, item E is a recommendation to revise Shannon Wilson's contract as Dean of Students and to move her to a full-time position effective October 24th of 2022 at step 8 Masters plus 12. The revised contract for the remaining 143 days will be at an amount of $47,534.63, including non-administrative staff exhibit B. So we brought Shannon on board this year in a part-time role. If you remember last spring, we said that we had somebody to take on most of the discipline role, to try to take that off of others' plates, such as Tara, Ashley, David, and myself as well. And Shannon has done a very nice job in this role, but she's been putting in a lot of extra hours and being compensated at 5.5 hours. So I think it is the right thing to do to move her to full-time status. There has been a need. It has definitely been beneficial to Ashley and Tara and David, and also myself, to have her in this role, to be the lead person when it comes to this. Anything to add on that, Tara?
Yeah, I'm so thankful that she's here.
I mean, because from 9:30 to 12:45, the busiest part of our day, it is active. There are things that pop up, and if it weren't for having Shannon, Ashley, and Tara would be spending a lot of their time dealing with those situations. They're still.
But I was just
Still
gonna say,
learning.
we just, I really, it's, yeah, having an additional person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she is handling the mass of the paperwork, phone calls to parents, the follow-up part, and it's that's happening once the students leave, you know, she's handling all of that at 1 o'clock, 1:30, parents not calling her back till 3, and that's where a lot of the, you know, outside of the hours that she's supposed to be here is happening, because, you know, just doing the paperwork, watching the films from the buses, that needs to happen when the kids aren't really here needing the attention. That's when she's not technically scheduled to be here right now.
And by moving her to full-time also, this gives us the ability to have her ride a school bus if there's a need, if we're having problems on a given day. And I think we can hold off now on discussion we previously had about potential bus date, especially we're looking at the Norwalk route. I think Shannon's full-time presence helps us right now with that if there's a need. Okay, item F is a recommendation to approve Brandy King as an intervention specialist at step 10, plus 12 for the remainder of the 2022-23 school year, effective October 24th, 2022. This contract will be for 140 days and an amount of $49,539 and 23 cents, including non-administrative staff. We were very fortunate, I think, to find an intervention specialist at this time of the year, and especially somebody who has many years of experience at Beaver Creek High School. And I did check on her references; they all checked out very good. And we are really excited. I think she's going to be a very good fit with our students, with the at-risk population. And as a bonus, she does live in Vermillion, which is a positive because we're looking to grow in that.
She also, I don't know if you got this email, but she communicated with me that we thought initially she was gonna have to maybe do a 1-year temporary license. It looks like ODE is going to approve her 5-year license.
Yeah, so she had communication with ODE. She had taken some classes back just after I think she had renewed her 5-year license last time. And it sounds like that is going to allow ODE to renew her 5-year license for now. So she wouldn't have to do a 1-year temporary license and then a 5-year license.
She's very well qualified in many areas,
Yeah.
according to her resume. That's wonderful.
And she's also fluent in sign language as well.
Mhm.
And that concludes new business items.
Does anyone have any questions on those? If not, could I have a motion to approve action items, the resolutions A through F? Moved by Dora, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Israel. Any questions? We'll have the roll, please.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Cuomo.
Yes.
Mrs. Lee.
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes. All right, Kelsey, we'll move back to you.
I do have quite a bit for you tonight, so I apologize in advance. And if there are any questions at any point, feel free to stop me. I'll try and stop frequently, but I know there's a lot to it. So first thing I want to discuss is our career tech spending. So you'll see at the front of my packet for you, I've attached the guidance, basically what we can use this funding on. So some concerns that we had last year, and we're running into it again this year, is that the career tech funding gets receipted just into the general fund. So it's sitting with our general fund money. However, it is supposed to be earmarked for specific purposes. Now, recently Ryan and I spoke with Paul, kind of the head of CBI in the state, and he gave us a little bit further clarification. And he made it sound like there are a lot of schools that kind of struggle to spend it perfectly with CBI. But with last year, with us receiving that 100% attendance funding and doing all that work to get more kids in CBI, our CBI funding was over $1 million for the year. We don't have the expenses to support that. I'm running into the issue where I can't just code things as CBI if they're not CBI. Like, I have to code it correctly. I can't put salaries or benefits, only stipends. So currently both the CBI stipends are in there, any CBI mileage is in there. I can't code any of our curriculum because we just purchase unlimited licenses, and I'm not allowed to do like a portion of it, a percentage of it. It has to just be a direct CBI. I talked with Diane Keegan about it, and they have that building, and they have employees for that building. We don't have anything like that. So I'm concerned, and as of right now, there is no reporting required on it. They're not monitoring it. Every time we've asked, any community school training I've sat in on, I've asked that question, is there a reporting for it, and who's monitoring it? And the ODE just says we're not at this time. Your state auditors might look into it. They haven't. They never did for Mike. They never have for Diane. They did not for ours last year. So moving forward, I still would like to really do our due diligence of trying to spend this money correctly. And it is a lot of money. One thought that we had was to take Reach Success out of Title I and spend that out of the general fund on career tech. That's about $8,000 per month, comes to close to $100,000 a year, which is a substantial expense. But when you talk about getting $1 million in a year, we're still not really cracking it. I spoke with Ryan about potentially, I don't know if we're interested in 2 vans. I know Margaret's suggestion for us was 2 vans. Maybe we use one for CBI mileage, any workforce trips. I don't know if we're interested in that, but I did attach the allowable uses, and I think it's something that we should really start to look into moving forward, what kind of things we'd be interested in spending that money on. Again, as of right now, no one is auditing it. My fear is 3 years down the line, they come back and say, well, what have you been spending this on? They decide to randomly audit it. And I know we're very, we really want to do things the right way. And so I just think moving forward, we should try to do our best to figure out how to spend this money.
Does this include, like job coaches and that kind of thing?
I would have to look back at the document, but I feel like that was on there. They give a lot of specific examples.
I wondered about category 3, the career-based intervention program.
If you flip to the 3rd page, this is kind of where they get into acceptable expenditures. I know one of the things that we met about yesterday, Tim Warwick with Reach Success has some interest in this program with industry credentials, and we were looking at potentially piloting that, and that's an expense that I think would definitely come out of this, and I think it would be really useful to our students. I'm not sure that we know exactly how it would pan out here, how it would function. It's definitely something we're looking into more, but that's a potential expense. But that 3rd page, I feel like, gives a lot of good examples of things that could potentially.
Do you recall 3 or 4 years ago when we had a presentation from Goodwill that offered services
I do.
to us in training and that kind of thing? I wonder, at that time, we had elected not to go ahead with that kind of program, even though it sounded like it would, work out really well. I wonder if that kind of an expense would be an option for us. It would help. It was more on site, so the work that I wouldn't want to, supersede Tim's work, but he can't do it all either.
Right.
And with our special education students.
I did look into kind of what we used to spend money on. I tried to go back a few years and look at what the expenditures were. The one year, the only expense that I saw was for Brett Eastern, and the way that they got around the salary benefits was that he was a purchase service from Margaretta, so it technically wasn't his salary and benefits. I know Mike told me that he used to code some of the curriculum, but that's when we were buying specific textbooks, and we had those Plan Your Careers textbooks specifically that we were purchasing, whereas now we just have unlimited licensures for all classes. So definitely something we need to look further and keep having discussions about. Does anybody have any further questions at this time?
No, but thank you for directing us to this page, so that if you have ideas or thoughts as you read those things, who would we channel questions or suggestions or ideas to? You?
I-
Chelsea, Ryan?
To both of us.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's something that the community kind of as a whole is gonna work on, so.
Could we develop a new program within that, like?
So we've been approached by Reach Success. They have proposed a career credentialing program through Ed2Go, I think the program is. And we've taken a look at that, and we're trying to see if that aligns with industry credentials for graduation. So we're doing some research on that before we decide to really jump into that. But Tim and Bill and Janet from Reach Success did a presentation with Tara and I. And Tim again met with Tara, Ashley, and I this past week to follow up on that. So it's something we're kind of taking a look at, but we're not sure exactly where that's going to go yet. But
And they're looking
that's
at
something.
using grant funding too to help fund that.
Yeah.
Reach successes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when he was talking about that with us, I was just thinking it would be better for us to just pay it out of the general fund, because we need the career tech expenses, so.
So the youth science,
We paid for that out of a grant initially, I think kind of before Ryan and I had the discussion with Paul, but the Rise Up industry credentialing we paid for out of career tech, so that's gonna be a good purchase for us. And I think kind of maybe expanding into the career credentialing will also be helpful.
and what expenses do we incur for kids going to the Holy?
I think that comes directly out of our foundation payment. That's that adjustments category where we see the negative amount. So it doesn't necessarily get charged to us as an expense.
Okay.
It would be nice if it did.
Yeah.
That would help me.
Yeah.
Do we have anything related to medical, like medical coding or something along that nature?
Like training for going to the medical field.
Yeah.
I mean, the career centers like EOB, that's an option students can pursue, but this career credentialing has different programs as well that Reach Success has approached us with. We just have to figure out how it would fit in with our model in terms of, tracking the student work, the attendance, and some other things. We're trying to really get a feel for it right now and see how it would align with what we do. But yeah, there are some medical programs.
We don't currently pay for it. If nobody else has any further questions, we can move along to our consolidated grants budget for fiscal year 23. So these might look a little like a lot at first. They're not too complicated. This is just the screen that I look at when I budget out our grants for the year. So you can see, for example, on this first page, this is our Title I allocation. At the very bottom right corner, you see they gave us $315,543. I wanted to go through these and just talk about what we're paying for out of each of the grants for this year. Our consolidated budget does not include our ESSER budget. I do have kind of a summary of things that we're paying for out of ESSER for you tonight, but our final expenditure report for fiscal year 22 has not yet transferred over to give us our new budgeted amount for fiscal year 23. I'm going to give you a ballpark of where we're at with it and when I expect to get into air for the ESSER following this. But for Title I, so we pay Joe Carney out of Title I. In salary and benefits, they're a little padded. I put that in case we managed to find another math tutor. I figured we could possibly pay them out of Title I. We pay for Reach Success. That is the $96,000 that you see under the support services. Now, if we are sure that we want to take that out of career tech, I can do a budget revision and I can start paying for Reach Success out of the general fund, and we can look at where else to put that money. Under supplies, there is a homeless set aside amount of $1,099.45. And then the rest of the supplies I put towards PBIS. I know our PBIS initiative is really taking off and we're doing a lot with it, so I wanted to make sure we had some extra support there. The following pages really just outline what I just told you. I just type in details. So if everybody's comfortable with it, I think we can go ahead and skip past those 4 pages and go on to the non-competitive funds. Our non-competitive fund is what we're paying Ossie and Redding out of. We pay his full salary and the majority of his benefits out of this, and then there's also a supplies budget for PBIS again. There's potential if we're not gonna spend that much in PBIS, that I can do a budget revision and move some of that more toward his benefits. I'm hoping the rest of his benefits I'll just pay out of ESSER, because we pay for lyric out of ESSER and they're the same position. Once the ESSER FER gets approved and I re-budget ESSER for this year, I plan on putting that into the budget. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, I'm gonna ask that we just do the same thing and skip ahead to the next grant. We've got Title 2A, supporting effective instruction. This is what we pay for tuition reimbursement and professional development out of. So supporting effective instruction, anything our teachers are doing or pursuing to better themselves, really. The one exception is probably special ed professional development, just because that cost goes toward our maintenance of effort, so I usually leave that in the general fund. We go ahead to IDEA.
And this is based on 2022 fiscal year, and this is the projection for 2023.
This is, yes, this is the allocated amount that we received. We received $13,491 for fiscal year 23. So that is what they gave us.
Okay.
And I budgeted it thinking that $3,000 per person could likely get used pretty easily in the professional development tuition reimbursement. Again, if not, we could look at rebudgeting. We've looked at the spending guides. I know as an admin team, we've looked at them before and talked about potential expenses. So we have leftover money. It's something that we could look at. It is significantly lower than it's been in the past, so it's, I'm not too concerned that that's going to be a huge leftover amount. IDA is definitely the one that we have trouble spending because we have to meet maintenance of effort before we can spend it. As of right now, and I'm careful with IDA, so the rest of the grant funds, what I do is throughout the year, I submit project cash requests and I get reimbursed for what we've spent so far. I don't do that with IDA. If you recall, last year we had conversations throughout the year of, if we don't meet maintenance of effort, Kristen Fallow, instead of being charged to IDA, will get moved to the general fund, and that happened last year to help us meet our expenses. So I had initially hoped that I could charge her to IDA, but when it came to the end of the year, we couldn't. I moved her out. So as of right now, I have Sherry Ransom in there. If we came to the same problem where we weren't going to meet maintenance of effort, she could then be transferred to the general fund instead. Ashley and I have had conversations about potential need for an aide. We do have quite a few very low IQ students this year, and she's concerned that there might be need for that. So she and I talked of potentially moving some of the salaries and benefits to support services. I'm also looking into putting our new intervention specialist into this budget as well, covering her expenses. I like the idea of being able to do that because it helps us maintain long term.
So when you talk about maintenance of effort, and we see what the allocation is, and we know what you're putting into it, that's the surplus that you talk about in terms of maintaining our effort to provide services.
So I have a breakdown of maintenance of effort coming up for you pretty soon after this, and I think that'll, okay, yeah, I think it'll give a clearer picture. Next, we've got expanding opportunities for each child. This is what we put youth science in. This is a lot of pursuing like additional coursework, like AP coursework, that kind of thing for students. So in the past, we haven't really utilized it a ton. It's something that would definitely require a little bit more looking into of things that we want to purchase. If you remember the supplement, not supplant rule, I can't just take things that we've already bought in the past years and put it into this. It would have to be new expenses. U Science was brand new, so it fell into that category. It fit pretty perfectly into this grant. Any questions? I think we've got one more. Yep, okay. Finally, Title IV. Student support and academic enrichment. Under support services, we pay our school nurse out of this grant. It will eat up that entire budget. It probably likely won't even cover the whole expense for the nurse. There's a safety, healthy and safe students category that allows us to pay for our nurse out of this. Last year, I actually got it in writing in an email that was an all-in purchase. So it does a nice job of covering our nurse costs for us. Again, I like that because it allows that to be maintainable for years to come. Next, we've got our safety grant funds. So I wanted to give an update on the safety grant because we're applying for even more money. We have not yet spent what we got this year. We also have some funds that are available from fiscal year 21, a couple of years ago. We have a remaining $419 balance from last year. Now, I did reach out today and send an email trying to verify that these are able to be spent. Sometimes with the grants, you have a time limit, so that fiscal year 21, I'm guessing, might be expired. But if it happens that we can spend it, and we still have quite a bit left from this year, because right now the only purchase we've made is the $6,598 door access control system. So we still have quite a bit of money from this year too, and I know we're applying for more to update our camera system. But this is something that we kind of discussed as an admin team. David and Tara looked into some options through DataServe, who's doing our door access control system. But I just wanted to make the board aware that we do have some excess funds in regards to safety. And I've attached the allowable uses from this year and last year, just for ideas of what it can be spent on. It is a little bit restricting. They're pretty specific with what they let you spend.
So the safe, the gun safe.
It was not level. I reached out about it, and a safe is actually on there, but it says for encrypted items only, and the representative confirmed for me that that would not include a gun safe.
So could these items, like when I see the cameras and those kinds of things, you've talked about how Margaretta has some systems that might be able to be improved. Could these funds be used for purchasing equipment for Margaretta?
Such as bus camera
For
systems.
the bus cameras?
We definitely have to ask. I don't think, yeah, I don't think, my initial response is that no, it has to be something more in the school.
Okay.
But we'd have to reach out and ask to make sure.
Now, certainly for the vans that we're purchasing that are ours.
Again, it would be something we'd probably reach out and confirm, just because they're pretty strict about it. David took the lead on applying for the safety grant, and I think some of the more technical terminology in here, he has kind of a better understanding of. But I do have contacts that I can reach out to and ask about that. I don't know that we put anything about cameras for the vans in our request, though. But some of the money that's left over for this year, I don't think has to be in our request because they denied our initial request and then they came back and just gave everybody that money. And so I think a lot of people had already purchased things. I don't think that requirement is so stringent with that 70 or 17,000. But what we're applying for this year, I think will have to be exactly for what we put in the application. there are no further questions about the safety grant, we can go ahead and talk about maintenance of effort. That's the sheet with the highlighted portion. So our special education maintenance of effort, we did end up passing. You can see at the very top left, it says calculated MOE pass. So this is what we spend out of our general fund on special education. You have to spend at least the same amount or more each year. So you can't spend your IDEA funds or supplemental grant funds until you meet your maintenance buffer, and then you can utilize it. Now, Ohio doesn't have the stipulation where you have to actually meet it before putting anything in IDA. As long as you meet it by the end of the year, it's okay to utilize them throughout the year. You can see the highlighted amount all the way to the right, the $1,204,195.18. That is what we spent in fiscal year 2022. So that's what we need to meet this year in order to pass our maintenance buffer. Now, in the table below, in the second column, I divided that large number by 12 to get about what we should be spending monthly so that I can monitor this throughout the year. So it comes to a little bit more than $100,000 per month. Where we would need to be by the end of September is at about $301,000. Where we were at the end of September was $329,873.01. So we're a little above what we need to be. So this is something I'll continue to monitor throughout the year. I will say last year we had that very unexpected jump in January where we got to claim 100% funding, and it caused our maintenance of effort amount that we had to meet to rise. Because you either meet the entire amount or you meet the per pupil amount. And the per pupil amount would have been lower if we had had that lower attendance percentage. My goal for this year is to be on track to meet the full $1,204,000 because there's no clarification from the ODE throughout the year about the definite population amount that they'll use. They indicated last year that it is the amount that is on our detailed funding report that we get every month. But whenever I ask them about attendance percentages and things like that, they seem to not really understand how we operate, that we operate based on our attendance percentage. They were very confused that we get funded based on a percentage, so it was hard to get any clarity about that. So I would rather play it safe and try to hit this full amount and just make sure we've got it clean cut, and then I can get some insight at the end of the year when they give me the population number that they used, whether they're using our attendance percentage or if they're just using a full FTE count. But we are on track, we're in a good place right now. I wanted to touch base also, if you recall, we discussed that there was a second maintenance buffer that was brought to our attention for the first time this year based on what is spent out of the general fund overall. We came in low on that one because of our use of ESSER funds. I think a lot of schools probably did supplementing with ESSER funds. We were told we're eligible for a one-time waiver. You can get one every 5 years, and I've applied for that. They have not given us a response. At this time, I have no concerns about it because the contact directly told me you're eligible for this based on your decline in enrollment. Just go ahead and apply for it. I don't see any need for concern as of right now. I will keep in touch with you guys as I get a response back for it. I don't anticipate it until probably the end of November, around there. There's no further questions about that. We can move on to our ESSER spending update. This wasn't included on the agenda, but I actually wanted to give you an update on where we're at with our ESSER spending. I took a look at what we're spending per month in ESSER to try and get an estimate of when we're going to run out of our ESSER 2 funds. In July, it was close to about 40,000. In August, it was about 105,000, and in September, it was about 93,000. So we have $241,830.45 remaining as of October 20th. So including the payroll that'll get processed on the 20th. With that in mind, I believe that about January, we're going to start moving into our ESSER 3 funds. This is the one where we have to keep a really close eye on that 20% learning loss. And our ARP ESSER allocation is actually a little above 2.9 million. So this is what we're hoping to get us through September 2024. We're hoping to spend as much of it as we can, obviously. But I also wanted just to give you a clear idea of things that we're consistently using ESSER funds to pay for so that we know moving forward, once it disappears. I mean, right now it is saving us quite a bit of money. So things that we consistently use the ESSER funds to pay for: salary and benefits from the list of employees there. It's almost all of our general education teachers. The 2 new additions, they were previously tutors under ESSER and they moved into full-time. We did get confirmation that it was okay to leave them. Bob Hamilton, Cindy Orshowski, a few more are part-time positions. I pay for the administrative cell phone use, support staff, and general education teachers because it's allowing us to contact distance learning, provide support outside of school. I leave the special education portion in our general fund, just because it goes towards our maintenance of effort. Our Verizon broadband plans, giving students at-home internet connections. We've paid for a large Chromebook purchase out of ESSER. Our advertising expense in the town money saver, that comes out of ESSER. Our resource officer, our cyber insurance for the year, any air conditioning maintenance, our data serve, internet connectivity, our management, we are getting reimbursed for that, or we're getting a discount for that with E-rate, I believe, but we did pay for part of that with ESSER. And then access points last year, we had a pretty large expense on the access points through Think CSC. I believe it was sometime around February last year that we utilized ESSER funds for. We also are looking into the use of it for a van, so we do have some larger purchases coming up.
Tell me what the access points are.
Like the panel there.
They're throughout the building to give internet access throughout the building.
Okay.
Does anybody have any issues with that? Okay, we can move.
That's really helpful.
Yes.
Was.
So we know when
Yeah.
the day comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, rapidly appreciate. We can go ahead and move past our minutes, and we'll get into our financial reports for the month. First, we've got our cash reconciliation. You can see we ended the month of September at about $6,379,145.82. If we move into the disbursement summary, I do have a couple of expenses I just want to make note of for you. Nothing in particular on the first page. On the second page, that very first purchase for $78,531.58. This was the purchase we approved with our E-rate contracts. We are actually getting about $63,000 of that back. This company in particular would not cooperate. Most companies will offer the discount up front and then they get the reimbursement from E-rate. They insisted that they charge the full amount and then we get that reimbursement. So that's why that amount looks so inflated. We're going to get about $63,000 of that back. On the next page, if you go about 5 down, you'll see a purchase for $63,175. That's our VLA, that's our curriculum. We had a very large purchase at the beginning of last year too. The costs seem to be inflated at the beginning of the year as we renew the bulk of our licenses. Those costs don't typically stay that high throughout the year. The initial one is typically the largest. And then on the next page, the very 2 expenses at the bottom are just something I wanted to make note of. This is not coming out of our general fund, this is coming out of our food account for Gordon Foods, but we are spending, I think, a little bit more than what we anticipated at the beginning of the year. I don't know if we're just feeding more students than we thought, or if more are taking breakfast. We haven't yet received reimbursement because I don't think the September one has just been released yet. It should be coming soon, I would think. But I just wanted to make note, our food expenses have looked a little high so far this year. It'll give us a better picture moving forward of years to come, but they're definitely looking a little bit higher than last year. Yeah, I guess food costs are going up. My grocery bill's outrageous.
Some of that may have been, Bob was stocking up, I think, on items that are going to last a while, because we've got a lot of stuff stored down in the hallway and back steps, so that might be.
Next, we just got the outstanding disbursement summary, so we can flip past the next 2 pages, and we'll come to our spreadsheet for the month. I'm going to request that you actually take the 2 pages behind it and make it so that we can kind of look at all 3. In the top right box, just one thing to make note of, the negative $16,217, that's that amount that gets pulled for like EHOBE. That's what we had just talked about, that's that vocational tuition. In the bottom right, some things I wanted to clarify. If you look, the supplies are negative for the month. This is what we talked about with the emergency connectivity funds. We had that $135,000 Chromebook purchase that we received 100% reimbursement for. There wasn't a lot of clarity about the proper way to code it at first, so originally we had it come out of the general fund. I transferred it to a $599 grant fund. That's a miscellaneous federal grant because it is technically federal money. And so when we got reimbursed, I receipted it into that account and it zeroed out. But moving it out of the general fund is what caused it to look like we had negative supplies expenses for the month. There's a potential for that to also happen with our TCS purchase, because right now I did the same thing. There's not a lot of clarity. I can't seem to get a good answer for whether or not it gets coded out of the general fund or federal funds. Typically with your E-rate purchases, the company discounts it automatically for you. You don't get money to receipt in. But because TCS insisted that we did, I am most likely going to code it as a $599 and receive that money in the same way. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. Our supplies do look inflated because of that. Again, they're going to look lower once we receive that money in. Also, we had that very large curriculum bill that it does fall under our supplies. So that's another reason that you'll see that supplies percentage is fairly inflated. Any questions on that so far? Okay. The handwritten sheet is my comparison of where we projected our revenue to be at for the year versus where this foundation payment is projecting us to be at. So I wanted to kind of point out a couple of the numbers for you. If you look on our spreadsheet, under state funding, we've got that amount, $2,895,517. And you'll see that at the top left. Now I added $513,146 underneath that on the handwritten sheet. That is the money that we're paying back. So I, when I put it on the spreadsheet, took that payback money out of what we're receiving, because when we receive that money in, it's taken out. But I wanted to give a comparison of where they have us at before the paybacks and then after. So that puts us at $3,408,663 before our paybacks to the ODE. We're a little bit higher what they have us at. They have us at $3,086,058 without career tech funding. Now their career tech funding, you'll see the number below, the $657,000 that I estimated was lower than what they have us projected at, with a little bit over $1 million. So once you factor in career tech, we're estimated to be a little bit lower than what they are estimating they're going to give us for the year. Then you have that adjustments category, the negative $16,000 that we just pointed out that comes out each month. So it came down a little bit from what it had been. Once they took our true attendance percentage, it lowered a little bit. So I had estimated a negative $194,000. It came down to about $163,000. So again, we're a little bit lower than where they have us before paybacks. So once they take out the $513,146, this is where you'll find the $3,358,214. This is what we estimated to be at, plus $20,000 in casino funding, $2,000 in interest, and that's where you see that final number at the bottom of our very left column. on our spreadsheet, that 3,380,214. That's where we estimated we would be at after paybacks to the ODE. Now, on this handwritten sheet, and also you can see it on your state foundation payment, all the way in the left column, right above the retirement system, they are projecting us to be at $3,433,823.81. This is assuming that our enrollment holds relatively stable for the year, which I think last year we did hold relatively stable. So I think this amount is fairly good. We are within about $50,000 of where they're projecting us. So we're very close in our revenue estimate, which is good. The calculator, the formula that we used came out to be very accurate, so I'm happy about that. But when we look at our 5-year forecast next month, and if you remember back to May when we looked at it, using those projections, once those ESSER funds disappeared, we were operating in a pretty significant deficit. So it's something we need to keep in mind moving forward. If our revenue estimates are holding pretty true, we're hopefully gonna have to really try to increase enrollment and get to a better revenue standpoint to be able to afford what we're currently operating at. One thing that I do wanna make note of, the paybacks, that amount, that $513,000, we are hopeful that that's gonna come down. They do a true up come January, and last year the amount lowered because they're basing it off of that 100% FTE. And now that we're taking our actual attendance, when they do that true up in January, that amount should lower. However, I do think it's better to just plan as if it's not going to, rather than be surprised if it doesn't happen. So I calculated it out as if we have to pay back that full amount. I'm hoping come January we are pleasantly surprised and then it lowers. That was a lot. Are there any questions?
No?
No, thank you for the explanation. I got it though.
I
Like here.
I think it makes a lot more sense when you can kind of see them all, because I'm sure when you guys flipped through it and like the handwritten sheet, I'm sure it didn't make a lot of sense, but I thought if I could tie it together for you, it would give you kind of a clearer picture of where our numbers are, where their numbers are, you know, we're right within the ballpark.
And the application of the information towards the 5-year forecast.
Yes. So the numbers on the 5-year forecast align really close with what we budgeted, and you'll see it when we go over it in November. One thing I also want to make note of, we just discussed potentially moving Reach Success into the general fund. That will inflate our purchase services a little bit, because that wasn't planned to come out of the general fund. So just a side note to make note of, they might look a little inflated if we do that. And I don't know if we need to like confirm that. Is that something that we want to do? Just start taking that out of the general fund, start spending that career tech money? Do we want to leave it in Title I for now? I don't know if anybody has any opinions on that.
Well, to me, it makes sense to use that career tech money.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We will
I
go
mean,
ahead.
if there is a motion, do we need a motion?
I don't think we do. I just thought maybe conversation, just so everyone was aware, we're probably gonna go ahead and do that moving forward.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on
No, it's something we have to, we're
Right.
looking to spend.
Spend that money, so we might as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next page is just the October payment again, but in summary for the year. So this is where like those circled amounts kind of line up. I tried to show you where they're at on the monthly payment versus the school summary. So if I kind of hold them up, I just tried to kind of draw connections for you where the numbers are at. And then I also included a financial detail report of the supplies, just because we talked about how the supplies were a little inflated. If you see the label on that page of ECF, that's the emergency connectivity funds that I said I moved out into the 599 because they were federal funds. So we received them in as federal funds. That's what caused that supplies to be negative for the month. That's our emergency connectivity funds. And then on the second page, I just highlighted again the VOA and the CSC expense that we'll get that reimbursement for at the bottom. Our next items, I handed out the community school annual budget. This is essentially just a different format that our budget, we already approved our budget. I had to put it in a specific format for North. This is something that we approve every year. Following our annual budget, we have our special education expenditures report and our special education and related services report. I fill out the expenditures that we spent last year, and then Ashley fills out the related services report. It gives a breakdown of how many students we have in each category, staff under our special ed, dates out of school suspension, assessments, modifications. So there's a lot of detail that goes into that. Ashley did a really great job with that.
So what we should see next month, if we were to look at the staffing, a shift from maximum numbers with the addition of Randy, will we see that change?
So we only do this once a year,
Okay.
but if you were looking at specific staff, I would assume that it would be spread out further. But
Because when I look at this, we've got 1, 2, 3 teachers who are at maximum at 25. And we've got 2 or 3 other teachers that are pretty darn close,
right.
to their maximum, so. Could you give us that breakdown for next month after Brandy those assignments?
Case load, including the general ed students that they have, or just the?
I think just,
I would say whatever this is,
yeah, I think that
to
should
show this,
Yeah,
Yep.
we can make that for you.
that would be great.
Actually, Carmen Zirkle usually updates those on either a weekly or bi-weekly basis, so I can share that probably in one of our weekly board updates.
Okay,
It looks like those were based on last year too, because if I'm looking at, the staff, like I see Amanda Apple on there. So I think this is based on last year's, but, it'll be helpful to look at some updated numbers. And finally, we just have the recommendation to approve the emergency connectivity funds program addendum to client agreement with Strategic Management Solutions for a total of $6,000, $788, $6,780.60. These are for their services on the emergency connectivity funds. We previously talked about this when we talked about the purchase of the $135,000 worth of Chromebooks. So they just take 5% of that total funding, and that is their consulting fee. They make sure we get everything done on time, everything done correctly, all the required paperwork and things of that nature. So that we can get that full reimbursement. And we did get it very, very quickly, so we were very happy with that. And if there are no questions, I am finally done.
Good job.
I'm sorry.
very good.
I'm sorry. I was a Guardians fan and we were hoping to get off the game. I didn't know that they were gonna play today.
Jean, I think before we, mention all this, we want to commend her for the wonderful job that she did.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. We're very fortunate to have both yesterday and both Kelsey, Brian, and Tara. as
Tara,
well.
absolutely.
So thank you to everyone. Is there a motion to approve items A through F of the treasurer's report? So moved, Jackie. Second. Have to roll.
Mrs. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Colon,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes. All right, very good. We have moved to the end of the regular agenda items. Are there any additions that we need to entertain? If not, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Moved by Israel, second. Moved by Delora. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. We will adjourn.